Certification Partners. I'm here with Stephen Snyder and Dr. James Stanger, our Chief Certification Architect and our Chief Certification Specialist. We're going to talk about teaching CIW, the tips, the tricks, and the traps involved in that. James and Stephen, you want to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
I'm Stephen Schneider. As Lisa mentioned, I am the certification specialist for Certification Partners, looking after the CIW program. And James?
Hey, I'm James Stanger, and I do my best to design the program and talk about it. I'm President and Chief Certification Architect of the outfit. We're excited to be here to talk to you about teaching CIW, to get Stephen's insights. On this slide here, you should be seeing what the agenda is going to be. We're going to be talking a little bit about what CIW is for those who are new to it. We're going to talk about where to begin, and then what the tips to help you implement CIW, how to get students more engaged, and then some of the things to watch out for, right, Stephen, as we go through teaching the courses. So there's the rough agenda for everybody. Just so everybody knows, anybody who's registered, that means if you're listening, you're registered, you will get a PDF of this particular PowerPoint slide so that you can go grab the URLs yourself and grab all of Stephen's killer ideas. So with any,
so I don't know if they're killer ideas or not, but just
I think they are
points of interest, let's say.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm a big believer, Stephen, that good teaching is good stealing. You know what I mean? Anytime you can grab ideas from various teachers and share things, it floats everybody's boat. Everybody does well. So I'm excited to hear about some insights that you have here. So well, before we get to what Stephen's going to be talking about in terms of all the teaching tips, let's do a very quick overview about what CIW is. CIW is a skills-based education program. It's a certification program that teaches vendor-neutral web design, web development, security, database, and various things of that nature. We offer courses and certification exams that focus, again, in standards-based web development and design. We're vendor-neutral. So we grab the best vendor applications from open source to industry-based things, including things from Microsoft and Adobe. So we put them all together in a competency-based approach where we say, look, we go out to the people in the industry all the time and we ask them, look, what are the skills that are so important? And people tell us, and we make sure that the courseware and, of course, the standards and our exams reflect exactly what industry wants. Globally accepted certification program. We have almost 1 million courses and exams delivered worldwide, over 200,000 certified individuals. CIW is a web education standard. It's created by web experts. We have a community of many web professionals and a global presence, and we listen to them constantly. And we also make sure that our educational design is solid. So not only do we listen to the techies out there in terms of the web, we also listen to the educators out there, university, community college, high school, and of course learning center. Who uses CIW? We have Kaplan University in the United States, Western Governors. We have Home Learning College and the University of the West of Scotland across the pond in the UK. We also have New Hebei University in China, various colleges in Japan. We are truly a worldwide organization. So we have universities, secondary schools, grades 9 through 12 worldwide, and community colleges, and learning centers, including New Horizons, all involved in teaching CIW. We've recently, in Internet.com, been named a top developer certification. And CIW is recommended as one of the top 5 certifications that puts you on the fast track for jobs in web development. We came in at number 3 with the distinction that we are the industry standard for webmasters. The first 2 were well-known vendor-based certifications, and we focus on more of a vendor-neutral, or as I often call it, a vendor-plural sort of approach to things. And the idea is that if you're looking to grab an in-demand skill set, in, for example, database, or in design, you come to CIW to learn all about it. So you can grab that internet internet.com article at the URL shown, and once again, we'll be sending you a PDF there. And my question to you, and Stevens too, right, is does a Grow Your Own web education program that you may be creating in your own school or your own learning center, does it have that kind of punch or not? And that's one reason why CIW is so powerful. Not only do we offer a standard with our education program, with our courseware, with our testing, but we also are out in the industry promoting you as a CIW certified individual. We have a CIW Advisory Council that we work with, and we work with various members, and it's a nexus or a cross-section of industry, academia, and government, for-profit and non-profit organizations who are involved in helping us design our certification program. So not only are you going to hear today about teaching of CIW, teaching of web design, but understand the concepts that are being taught are ones that are vetted by this advisory council and these members, and we have people from China, from the United States, Japan, the United Kingdom. So again, we have a good global cross-section of individuals providing their input. And then, of course, we regularly poll and talk to various certified CIW certified people to learn more, so we can learn more about what they need and what people need in the web design industry. Well, that's a quick overview of what CIW is. So let's get to the meat of this presentation, shall we, Stephen? Stephen, you're the meat. I guess I'm just the potatoes. Is that how that works? So.
Yes, I think so. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. No, I had a little big glitch there. I dropped my connection.
No, we love it when the connections drop. That happens. So
absolutely.
Well,
but yeah, we're talking about where to begin, and that's always a good place to start is at the beginning. And I think that's really one of the key issues, James, is to getting our CIW program off the ground and running in an academic environment the right way, is knowing exactly where we need to begin. Where do we need to go with the CIW program? What do we need to be offering? Because there are so many different tracks or ways to implement CIW into an environment. Understanding the exact program or the exact course that we need to implement is really the key, and that's really the key to understanding of having a successful program. For instance, for a long time, a lot of people thought that the CIW Foundations Associate or WFA program was what we need to be offering in Web Design 101. When in actually, a lot of people found, well, that might be just a little bit too introduction to information technology oriented, where we've got a lot of emphasis on networking, a lot of emphasis on job skills for working in a technology environment, as opposed to just designing sites. And then so other people said, we want to start with just coding and just having students work on design projects. And so that's where we came in, with maybe we should, maybe some customers would feel better implementing the Site Development Associate program prior to, as opposed to the full Web Foundations Associate. And we have customers that will jump directly in with the Site Design Specialist course and working with the project management aspects of it. So it's really having a feel for what am I currently doing? What are my goals for my web class? What do I want to do in Web 101? What do I want to do in Web 102? And what approach do I want to take with it? Am I starting out with a broad overview of the technology field overall, and then letting students kind of filter into the best track that meets their needs in Web 102 or technology, 102 or 103, moving that route.
That's right. Yeah, I agree, Steve. And I think with Web Foundations Associate, if you want to give a good broad overview of the entire IT profession and get people not only understanding design but also the architecture that underlies it, you go with Web Foundations Associate. If you're looking for something that is a pure design entry, an entry into pure design, then you can go the SDA route and then go into Web Design Specialist, right?
Correct. Absolutely. And so it's really geared at what our target audience, what our target class is doing. Some programs may feel, well, we already have done coding, HTML coding, either at another grade level or in another course, and so we want to focus in primarily on the graphical applications and the design management aspect, project management aspect overview, and the skills, the elements they need to go into it. And at that point, they would be better off jumping directly into web design specialist, or if they want a more beginner's approach, so to speak, of learning the coding, then starting out with SDA.
That's right. And if you go take a look at CIWcertified.com, you can check out and get very clear descriptions of the web foundations associate, and then of course SDA, and then web design specialist to help. And I think one of your points is that as a program, as an instructor, and then as a dean, or as an instructor, as a person running that learning center or whatever, you need to communicate exactly what the needs of your classroom is going to be very clearly. I think in the past you and I have seen where people have done that very clearly, and the classes went off as expected. And it's when that communication does not take place, right, is one of the traps that you can fall into, right?
It's definitely a trap. Getting off to the right, on the right foot can definitely be a trap if you go down the wrong direction. And like you said, James, we've seen it in both directions. We've seen it happen where we work with customers and having a really good understanding of which program is best for them to start out in, and we've seen it the other way around, where for one reason or another they pick up on a different program route, and it wasn't exactly as they were expecting. And that's our point there. We're very willing to work with whoever is responsible for the courses to figure out what best CIW course meets their needs. We just need to get the dialogue going.
I agree. I think it's the main thing. Now, on this next slide, you're basically talking about, Stephen, ways in which things can be customized and how long it takes to teach some of these things. I think that's another thing that as long as people are clear about the teaching times and that sort of thing, then programs can be far more successful. You want to care to elaborate a bit more about that?
No, that's a really good point, in that the programs can be very flexible. We've seen the CIW courses taught in a number of different time frames. Straight off of the shelf, the default value, so to speak, the curriculum certifications are pretty much geared for an academic school year in a secondary environment, or a semester-long program in post-secondary. The Web Foundation Associates, that's a year-long high school academic track, semester track, post-secondary. Same thing's true with the Web Design Specialist or the E-commerce Specialist. I mean, that's pretty much how we envision, well, how you envision them as our Chief Certification Architect, right, James? And our academic advisory council, with their input in them. Now, we have seen them being implemented very successfully in a number of different time frames. We've got customers who have implemented the site development associate and the web design specialist in a single academic school year, and have done it, remarkably well. Some people will, I talk with, said, that is just so much material to try and get through in an academic year. It's 2 individual courses. But there's a lot of areas that those 2 curriculum packages can work together. I've also seen, in our Web Foundation Associate, we've got the Internet Business Associate, the Site Design Associate, and the Network Technology Associate. And that's geared for, those 3 modules, components are geared for an academic school year. But we've also seen where people have taken out that Site Design Associate and made that a full academic year-long program. And they have the ability of being able to do that because the students would have a lot of time for working on projects, either live work projects from the community or projects that the instructor comes up with, but they're focusing in and honing in on those design skills with cascading style sheets and XHTML coding. We also have customers that will manipulate that down. We have one customer right now who is teaching the SDA Site Design Associate in an online program, online course, in an 8-week track. So they're getting through all of SDA in 8 weeks. And their comment to me was, can I even do that? That just seems like so much material to get through. And well, of course you can. You know, if you were looking at a normal academic program, that's about what that course, that module would take to get through in a standard program anyway, if you were implementing it with Web Foundation Associate as part of it. So there's lots of different ways of being able to implement that.
And so the main thing is that if you can certainly work with us for more input, right, about how long such things take. And we have sample syllabi and that sort of thing all in the book ready to go. But that doesn't. It's always good to give Stephen a call, me a call, or people here at CIW. We can talk to you about the experience that we've had right along. So you're not alone in implementing this, right?
Absolutely, and remember that flexibility is key. There's a good amount of overlap in lots of different areas because these are modular-based certification tracks. They build off of one another, and so just
That's
like
right.
my very first example of using Site Design Associate and the Web Design Specialist, you know, there's a good amount of overlap, so that once you go through and you have a good understanding of the coding, the XHTML, understanding page structuring, and then you get into Web Design Specialist, and again they'll start talking about some of this material as review. So you've already covered it, so we don't need to spend quite as much time focusing in on it in that course because we've already been through it. So there's a lot of different ways of tweaking that.
That's right, I agree. And repetition can be good. There's the bad kind and there's the good kind. And if you're just going to go from one course to the next and there's a bit of repetition, that simply is a bridge to the next level of learning, right?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. That's a great point.
And I think, and so the idea of making sure, in regards to timing, it's very important to understand that don't get confused. I've noticed some people can do that. Don't get confused with some overlap in content with how much time it will take to do something. It's kind of an accordion style metaphor. I used to, you know, you can pull it out, make it longer, or you can compress it a bit, and you can do so without damaging your students' ability to learn pretty easily. It's doable. Well, Stephen, let's talk about some tips then about instructing, because I've noticed in various conversations that we've had with our partners, sometimes they forget some of the basics. So let's talk about the Instructor Resource CD.
Well, and it is a basic tip, and like you said, a lot of times we overlook that. When you get your courseware, a lot of times those CDs can actually be stuck to a piece of cardboard that accidentally gets, you know, we pull off our styrofoam or our plastic wrap, and we're all excited about seeing this gigantic book that we've received, and we toss the plastic and the little cardboard pillared doohickeys away, and not even give it a second look, when actually there might have been a resource CD stuck with it. So always check for the resource CDs that comes with your packets, because there is a lot of information that's in there. The Instructor Resource CD has a lot of the content that you have in your instructor manual available to you, but it also has some more information too, such as a PowerPoint presentation template that has a lot of your basic slides for lecture type material that focus in on exam objectives. Also, we have electronic versions of the activities, some sample syllabi, as James had mentioned already, that are in there, so you can go in and kind of tweak that to fit your needs, or kind of see, you know, how it's done in a learning center model, or how it's done in a 16 or 32 week sample. We also have the quizzes that are on that CD, so you don't have to worry about photocopying from the book or anything. You can print them off. We also have the lab files. Now, students will get lab files with their course material also, but the instructor has the lab files, but they also have the completed lab files, so you can go in and do some comparing to see how things are going to look. Now, of course, what happens when we say, oh my gosh, I didn't get an instructor CD? Well, actually, you know, it might have gotten misplaced or damaged, or, you know, we use them for frisbees like I do, or, you know, they did get lost with the cardboard, you know, insert material. You know, all of this instructor material is available to instructors on the CIW Certified Instructor website, located off CIWcertified.com. And from in there, you can pick the course that you're looking, that you're teaching, that you're interested in, and then select the type of material that you need off of it. So it is always available, even if we can't lay our hands on the CD directly.
I think it's really important for everybody to understand that this material is there, and those completed lab files are also important because that way you can show students, look, this is what you're working on, and this is what you're going to end up doing, end up creating. The idea is that students won't get lost. They won't lose the forest for the trees. It happens a lot, I think, or at least you can. And if you give people a clear vision about where they're going, then they'll do their darndest to make sure it happens in terms of completing the site or completing the course.
And you're right, it does become a teaching tool because there are a lot of times when students say, well, I can't get this. I can't, this isn't working. It doesn't work. And, for the instructor to be able to pull up the, and show it as a demonstration in class or something, the completed file, what the site should look like when they get done with it. It helps. It shows them, shows them the big picture. Okay, I can do this. If it's done, it can be done. It's okay. It's the same advice that I give to everybody in Lesson 3 in Site Development Associate course. Where you start doing the XHTML coding, and the first page you create, you have to go out and you validate it. And the first time students go out and they validate that code, and it comes back with 900 million errors, and you go, oh my God, this is never going to work. How can this work? And they start pulling their hair out. The best tip that you can give to the teachers at that point is just don't do anything. Tell your students to proofread their code and make their errors and validate it again, and then come back and talk to you. And surprisingly enough, they fixed one typo, and their number of errors have been reduced. But yes, being able to show examples is huge.
Yeah, it's interesting what you point out is that 9 million errors that they get back when they validate a page. They go up to, say, W3C, and they use the validator, and it returns it back. What's always funny is that one comma out of place or one wicket out of place, and suddenly you got a million errors. So one of the tips that I would say is, as you go and validate whether it be a live site that you're creating or just that basic page that they're creating, teach them that coder is not exactly user-friendly, very industry standard, but not user-friendly. And so that if you make one simple fix, suddenly all is right with the world. Have you seen that before?
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen that a lot of times. A lot of times. It's a lot of times it's just a very simple typo in code that makes a difference of a page validating or a page being full of errors.
So this next slide that this next slide we're talking about basically a good tip is to focus on designing sites. So, Steve, I think sometimes we can find people can say, well, do I do the certification exam or do I show people how to create a site? Well, the answer is, of course, they're both, because you want to take a real-world approach to things, right?
That's correct, James, and it is. Our courseware really lends itself to being a project-based course. There's a lot of labs throughout the courseware that have you working on scenarios or have you working on projects as you go through the material, both in our design courses and in our security course, and even to some extent in the networking course. You're always being able to apply what it is that you're doing through working on activities. And that's the purpose of our web design course, is to get students to understand how to design good sites and to be able to build their portfolio as they're going along so that they can show what it is that they're doing. And so being able to work on projects, whether it's projects that the instructor comes up with themselves or whether it's projects that they come up with from local community, projects that students have they bring in and say, hey, I'd like to work on this project. I was talking with one teacher over the summer, and this was his second year for teaching, and I asked him, how things had gone, through his previous school year, and he said, much better than it did the first year. He said, we did a lot more design work. Each week we would focus in on designing a different page, and he let his students vote on the topic that they were going to, work on for that week. So that's having them design, having students design as they go through this. It's just a huge help in getting them to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Stephen, and they're not mutually exclusive, these projects, because if you are doing a real-world project, for example, it's in the United States anyway, it's football season, and so you can help the high school, for example, put together a page that does the schedule for the football team or whatever. Or you can go out to a local business, do a website for them. No matter what it is, as you learn to do all of these things, you will, in some ways, naturally learn what CIW is all about, because we focus on using a job task analysis of what it means to create an actual page. And as you do a real-world project, you're in many ways naturally going to learn all of those things necessary to pass that exam, right?
I agree, pretty much so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was just saying, this is just as we were just saying. You know, it's that real-world approach. You know, gets the students preparing sites that are going to be, you know, friendly to the audience, friendly to search engines, and they're going to have the skills that they need to actually get through the certification exam. And examples, you know, just like you were saying, James, developing a site for the sports team, for the school, for local community. Also, you know, the student building their resume online, and starting to include projects that they're working on in school, so they're building that digital portfolio with them that they can take with them and see. And I always use the example, James, and just, you know, one quick tangent. I always use the example of a student that I had in class one day. Then he went to a web shop to apply for a position, and he came back, and we all asked him, you know, well, how'd you do? You know, how'd the interview go? And he said, you know, it was so weird because they asked him all the general questions. Well, tell us about yourself. Well, tell us about your goals. What do you want to? Where do you want to be in 5 years from now? Da, da, da. And then he said, you know, the person who was interviewing turned around to his computer and said, you know, give me some sites that you've worked on. Let's see your work. You know, so they wanted to see that, and you know, of course, he had the ability to say, well, you know, go to our school website. We're able to post our portfolios. Da da da. But you know, it drives home that incentive that you need to be working on your skills.
I agree. So as you do a resume and a portfolio, see, that way students see that the activities that they're doing in class have a very real effect on the career that they'll end up with. So if your students are career changers, or if your students are kids in school, or if they are people in a university, regardless, that's a universal thing that will apply. Well, so go ahead, Stephen. What kinds of projects have you seen, or you know, kind of job roles? Why is it important to focus on job roles in terms of creating a site or going through the classroom?
James, it's really important to be taking a look at this. When we start taking a look at the Web Design Specialist course, you know, the first few lessons in that course talk about the web project management aspect of it, and web teams, collaboration, working with one another, and the individual roles that are a part of a web design team, and that is really big today, because it used to be 5 years ago, we'd go out and say, you know, hey Lisa, we need a site for our company. Can you do that for us and have it done by Friday? And Lisa'd go back to her desk, she'd pull up Front Page Express, and in, you know, 15 minutes she'd have a website for us done. And it was a very static, I'd call the early days of the web, you know, websites, they were basically glorified yellow page ads. They're, you know, very static in information. And today, you know, how much information do we have on a particular website today? And it takes more than one person to be able to create that site. And so as you're working on a website project for a company, you're having to interact with others, and those various roles that are spelled out, you know, the information architect who's working on the design layout, you know, the navigation for the site, the graphics designer that's working on the images or working on the animation, the information technologists that are making sure the database is working correctly, or the scripts, and that all of that is playing together. The content developer who's making sure that the content is going to be, you know, well-defined, gets our information out there, and make sure that it's search engine friendly, appropriate use of our keywords and phrases. And of course the customer, the most important customer, because they know what type of information, what type of target audience they're wanting to hit. And it's important that we're playing around with it, and that our team members are asking the correct questions of the customer so that they can design the site to meet the needs. And all of this is really important for when somebody goes to look for a job. I was talking with an employer from up in the Pennsylvania area, last summer, and one of the things I was asking him, when somebody comes to you for a job, what is it that you want to see from them? And he was saying, we want to see that he can be a team player. Can they work with others? Do they know their responsibilities? Can they fulfill their responsibilities and get their tasks done? But one of the biggest things was communication and collaboration, working with other team members. It's a huge role, and getting students to be able to fill those roles now is just a huge asset to them.
It's a really good point, because when people say, are they a team player, it's not so much that it's the person who regularly brings cookies on people's birthday, although it's always nice. It's more, do they understand how all the pieces fit together, from the customer to the architect to the designer to all the IT folks making it happen. And with CIW, that's one thing I often hear, is that there is really no other web program that shows how all the pieces fit together.
I agree.
So, yep. Okay. Other tips. This is one that I've heard that you and I have harped on a lot with folks in terms of becoming a CIW CI.
Correct. Why not? Go ahead and become a certified instructor.
Yeah.
Go through the process yourself. Participate in the Faculty Institute, our Train the Trainer program. Learn how during those programs we talk about what other customers are doing, what other teachers are doing. We get lines of communication open. We fall back on each other's expertise, but then we also talk about how we implement the program. But you also become certified through the course yourself, and you have the opportunity to be certified. You can be a certified site design associate or web design specialist, and you to be able to take that back to your classroom and say, look, I can do this. This is obtainable by you, and you're, the students are learning from the expert then. And then, of course, it's a matter of some paperwork after that to become an actual CIW certified instructor. Allows you access to the certified instructor portal on the CIW certified website, and of course you have access to the official logos for your program and for yourself. It's really a good feature that a lot of times, James, is really overlooked, and that might not seem an earth-shattering tip, but it does have a lot of usage to it.
I think one of the main things too is that when you are learning a new program, let's say at CIW, or if you are meeting a challenge, the best thing you can do is reach out to your network for help, for advice, for tips, and it's the CIW CI program that allows you to do that very easily, because you meet other people who are in similar situations as yourself, and you're not in this alone kind of thing. I think that's a major part of being part of that community. So.
Okay, great.
Okay, so become a CTC, a testing center. And I think this is a really exciting program, because instead of sending your students to View and or Prometric, which are great organizations, great way to go, you can bring the exam environment right in your classroom. And I think that's a major value add, right, Stephen?
It is. It's one less thing that you have to mark off your list when we talk about exam anxiety for our students. Of course, you can't test yourself, but if you've got another person on campus that's a proctor, then they could proctor,
right,
your exams if you wanted to go through more. But it allows you to be in control of the exams, because you've got ultimate control of when you want to offer the exams to your students, when it works with your schedule, when it works with student schedules.
That's right. That's right. Now, we also have CIW Online, right? The ability, so we've talked about doing testing, but CIW Online is another way to keep students engaged, because you have probably about 10, 15 minutes, maybe even shorter these days, before students of various ages in one way or the other get bored. So you have to mix, I think, a lot of visual stimuli along with the lecture, and mix a lot of lab sort of activities with your books and that sort of thing. Tell us more about CIW Online, Stephen.
CIW Online is a very good resource, James, just as you were mentioning, and it's great to get students engaged in the material. That's one of the comments I hear all the time is, well, students don't read, they don't like reading, and our books are full of words, and they have to read those words. And yes, that's true, but there's also a lot of things to do on the side of it, just as you were saying, about 15 minutes of lecture time, and then have them going out and work on exercises either on CIW Online, with our online activities that are flash-based exercises that supplement the lessons material, flashcards helping with terminology, course review questions that come directly from the content that's in the book, so that the students are able to go through and basically find that topic and find that particular answer. Quizzes that can be used for classroom assessment, and then practice exams to help us get ready for the actual certification exam. So it's a way of engaging students, getting them through the material, but it's also a tool for them because it is online. They can access it anywhere that they have internet access. So they can be working on this, you know, if for instance, on Friday night they don't want to go to the football game, hey, let's do some CIW online exercises. No, what am I saying?
You know, the portability of that, yeah. The portability though is really unique though, and very important because it's portable not only in terms of where you can access it from. It's flash-based, so most browsers, or most any browser is going to be able to support that. So
okay.
It's good to see. Let's talk about some tricks, Stephen, in terms of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's talk about some pages people can go to, and these are sites that I love to talk about, and but I think a lot of people have not heard about them.
Well, I'm a big fan of teaching by example, and there's a lot of sites out there that will take the approach of learning good web design by looking at bad. Vincent Flanders, you may not like the URL, and you might have to get your IT department to unblock it because, you know, a lot of times his URL is typically blocked from campuses. But he takes a very unique approach, and he presents it in a bizarre way that students can relate to. They like his humor on the website, the way he presents the material, but he really analyzes the key points of the website. He really picks out websites and harps on the things that are wrong with them, but then also tries to turn around and gives, you know, some good points about it. What do they have working in their favor? You know, as well as what you can learn by, you know, from their other people's mistakes. So it's a really good site to go to for that. I'm a firm believer in pulling up websites and talking about them during class. You know, we spend a few minutes lecturing, making sure we understand the key points, and then look at some examples.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. It's perfect. And, you know, you can create screenshots, by the way, of various things from webpages.suck.com and bring them into class. That way you can, you know, get past any sorts of, at least for the day, right, any sorts of blocks. In that way, or you can even save them you can save them locally and put them up on your own web server, things like that. So there are lots of workarounds that you can do that are just as real world and just as cool. In fact, even cooler, because students start thinking, oh, so that's how you can, you know, avoid online and offline problems in terms of accessing website content, things of that nature.
So you bring up a great point, James. So let's actually take an activity in doing this. I've got a couple of screenshots in it. We've got a few screenshots in here, and so we're going to take a look at them. And this is a typical type of exercise that we can do with our students in class. We're going to go to the next slide in just a minute, and we're going to take a look at it. And I want you to I want everybody to think in your head for just a second what this site is about, what it's doing. What do you like about, what you don't like about. Now remember, Pew Internet Life Statistical Research did a survey not too long ago that said that when we as web consumers are out and we do a Google search and we for a particular product or service and we come back with this long list of web, you know, results, we click on a link and we go to a website. How much time do we spend there? And the typical answer is about 3 seconds. So we've got 3 seconds to get our point, our message across to the viewer to make them want to stay on that site and click another link. So remember that on these next few slides that we're going to take a look at, you've only got about 3 seconds to come up with your entire picture of this site. Okay, James.
Okay.
1001.
Okay, so
1002. Go ahead.
All right, so 3-second rule. Here we are.
Yep. Okay.
Oh my.
That's
now, this is a live site. This is a real site.
This is a real site.
We didn't make this one up. Yeah.
Okay. Move on, James.
Okay. You got it.
Okay.
This is lingscars.com. Tell us more about it, Stephen. This is fun stuff.
Well, lingscars.com. So it's an automotive site from the UK. All right, and obviously it has a few things wrong with it. Now we spent a little bit longer than 3 seconds, you know, as you got to see, you know, the visual of the site, and we didn't even go under the hood and take a look at the actual code. But here's a list of some things that aren't going real well for the site. Small text, which is difficult to read. Large text, which is difficult to read. Lots of words in all caps. How about the colors? Scrolling, blinking, fading. Well, we didn't see that because it was a screenshot, but trust me, it was there. It's there, or you can check it out for yourself.
Yeah, that URL is wonderful.
Text in all different ways, sideways text, inappropriate font faces, use of the Comic Sans, that's not really professional. Video and audio. On top of that, we didn't get to see the young lady on the top. She does get up and start walking around on your screen and talking to you as you move through the site. So there's just a whole lot going on with that site that are basically distractors to what the actual purpose and what the actual message that we're trying to get across to our customers.
Yeah,
hey, James,
it relies totally on images. Yeah, it relies totally on images over text, and images are great and everything, but in terms of search and optimization, all those things, it can be a real problem, and this site does have that problem.
Yeah. Let's take a look at another one.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, 3-second rule again, 1001, 1002, 1003. Okay, James.
Okay.
All right. Now, of course, again, this was a screenshot, so you missed the benefit of the full animation with that little skier skiing downhill and the snow falling in the background. That's all an
animated
animated
the snow's constantly
GIF.
falling. Yeah, the snow's constantly falling. I mean, it's okay. Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
Okay, and it's scrolling. So if we did have that site up live, you probably got the gist that the site is about a skiing resort in Utah, okay? But where's the rest of the meat? Well, you've got to scroll, and then you've got to scroll some more, and then you've got to scroll some more. Link after link after link after link on that page, but you're requiring the visitor to scroll in order to find particular information that they're looking for. It's a table layout, which is non-W3C standard right now, and of course our mixed fonts and dislocated headings, things of that nature. So, and of course, if we looked at the code, we were missing some tags. So, okay, put another example.
Okay,
now,
so let's take another.
Go
ahead, Stephen. Yeah. No, you go.
I was just saying what we've been seeing are really some blatant examples of design gone wrong. But what about some examples that are out there that are more professional, sites that we wouldn't really think would have issues to them? They're a little bit more subtle. Okay, James. Okay, 3-second rule again. 1001, 1002, 1003. Okay, James.
Okay.
All right. This is a popular site, CNN, the CNN entertainment site. But what's going on with it? Well, they take up a lot of real estate in their header. Go ahead, James. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut
you off. They do. No, you're right. They do take up a lot of real estate with that header, and can it be any more red? I mean, and it's very good to have lots of white space. I see that, and it's also good to use images in a strong way. It can be very effective, but they seem very haphazard, and it's almost there's a fancy word, it's called parataxis, where you kind of stick ideas bang, bang, bang right after each other, and they don't seem to have much relevance to each other. And I understand, back in the day I read the Rolling Stone magazine where it would have random notes, where it would just have cool things going on and all that. But it seems to me there's a difference between random and, utter lack of continuity, And the text of the page just seems to kind of sit there and various things. And also lots of different flash coming in and banner ads. And it seems to be just a site that is possibly a little too busy for its own good. Are there good things about the page? Absolutely. Other than the fact that Justin Bieber is on the page, you definitely do have good use of some technology, good use of white space, and things of that nature. But you can talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, not just the bad. But I think it's very important to understand that higher profile sites have issues too. So Stephen, let's sum up the activity then and talk about some of the things that people can take away here.
It's getting back to the point we were talking about just a minute ago. It's learning by example. It's showing that there are sites that are not, they're not following the rules. And how do these sites come up with being in existence? What type of market are they trying to reach? How professional is that organization coming across? And there's a lot of different ways that we can use this in the classroom. When we talk about what are sites doing good, we can go out and do a Google search for a particular product and service and come up with those first few links that are coming back. You know, they've made it. They've been successful in getting their site ranked high in the search engine. So let's look at them and let's dissect them and see what they're doing right, as opposed to some other sites that are doing wrong. Our van is having some mechanical issues. I think I need to replace my battery, and I went to look for the garage, to call the garage up the road from us. And so I Googled the garage name, Knoxville, Tennessee, and I said, oh, hey, they've got a website. How about that? And I clicked on their link. I was like, oh my God, they need a web designer. And so it's by looking at these sites and saying, you know, hey, how professional is this? How are they doing this? How could this site be improved? And so it's really a great opportunity to be in education in the classroom.
It's great because students, if they develop an eye for a design, they become more analytical, and of course you have a more interactive classroom. It's not all about entertaining the students, but the interaction can educate them tremendously. So it does more than just make it fun. Students, they develop a sense of how to think critically about a site, and also they can say, just because we can do something technically, maybe aesthetically we shouldn't. And so you balance, you start to create a balance as you compare websites between, you know, what you can do and what you should do aesthetically. And I think that's a very important a part of this activity. And it's something that will tie right back into the CIW objectives for the exam or the coursework.
I agree.
Okay, let's talk about some supplemental resources, Steve. And W3 Schools is a great one, Zen Garden as well.
They are really good. W3 Schools is a great resource for extra tutorials that kind of supplement, you know, the points that CIW is bringing about. I love their tutorials on creating cascading style sheets and understanding, you know, the roles between them. They've got tutorials from everything from HTML, XHTML, Java, JavaScript. It's really a very useful resource to have in your classroom and in your tool bag for supplementary material. CSS Zen Garden is just an awesome example of what CSS is and how it can do it. There are links on there that will, you click on a link and it completely changes the way a site looks. And it's not doing anything with the content on the page. It's simply changing a cascading style sheet and graphics that are used with that CSS. So it's a really wonderful example to show students this is what cascading style sheets are all about.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Now, when it comes to teaching things in the classroom, whether it be about web design or whether you're doing the Web Foundations course, virtualization has become, you know, all the rage it has for years, but I think it's something that we need to explain a bit to some of the instructors on the call today.
We can use some applications to create a virtual environment directly on our student PCs or on our instructor PC to where we can run multiple operating systems. So that we could have, for instance, in our network security course, you could be setting up a virtual network where you're going to be running, configuring firewalls, and then seeing, you know, what type of effects the configuration on firewall will have to other workstations. Or in our web design course, we could have a web server, a virtual web server, that we're going to have access and upload our websites to. It's a way of really expanding our resources in a limited resource environment, basically.
That's right. If you've got virtualization software around and you can get it, you know, from there's open source stuff that works very, very well, so you don't have to go out and pay VMware for it, and you can get all of these things going, nice Windows, Linux-based servers going, and show people exactly what happens out in the real world. Virtual networks are also important. You can create isolated networks and have your systems administrator do that for you so that you don't run into problems in terms of access issues. And you can also configure a network firewall. All of these things you can do in a virtualized environment. Let's talk about some traps, Stephen, and ways to get out of them. Yeah.
There are traps everywhere, of course, and one of the biggest traps that I've always hear of, James, is where instructors get too tied up in the book, and they think they have to get through every single word in the book in order to get the student through the certification. And it's just the opposite of what we've been talking about before, where they spend too much time lecturing and trying to get through the content and don't give students enough time to actually do projects, to work on hands-on on material.
That's right. And I think becoming a CI helps do that, and remembering what the exams are doing and focusing on real life and making a balance between the two. That way you're doing what I tend to call kinetic activities or hands-on activities, some lecture, some video, and actually make them, spend a couple of minutes reading, just a few, and then you mix all that together, and I think you've got yourself a way out of that trap.
I agree.
Practice exams.
Practice exams is huge. I talk with several people that have tried just using the course review questions to prepare for the actual certification exam, and that's just not the right way of doing it. As the course review questions and the quizzes are supplements for the textbook. It helps the student understand where they are with the content that the book is presenting. The certification practice exams are going to be geared towards the way the information on the exam is going to be presented. In your review questions, you can literally go in and find those review questions word for word directly out of the textbook. It's a guide. It's a supplement for the textbook. The practice exams are going to be worded more similar to the way that they will appear on the actual certification exam. They're going to be scenario-based, and so it gets the students thinking about how the content will appear on the actual exam, and will do a better job of preparing them for questions they see on the exam.
See, the main thing, it reduces exam anxiety, gets people understanding how it goes, and very quickly you'll see, students will see how the real-world stuff that they did maps to the exam and vice versa. What about no access? We run into this a lot where things can get blocked.
We do run into this a lot, and it's just like the example about the URL for Vincent Flanders web pages that suck. There's a lot of blocks on sites. There's a crackdown on what students and faculty have the ability to access as they go through the curriculum. We've got all of the links that the courseware actually references, and that's actually a long document. There's a lot of URLs throughout the book and resources, web resources that are used through the courseware that we can provide to schools that they can give to their IT department to make sure that they are available and not blocked, so that the classes have access to them.
Yeah, it's ready-made. It's there, and it's something that can be easily accessed. So if you can work with your IT department, you're in pretty darn good shape. In addition to blocking, students, they definitely want to show off their work. So how can you work your classroom, Stephen, so that they do walk away with something cool?
Well, there's several different ways of doing it. Again, working with the IT department. Is there a place on the campus website that students have the ability of posting portfolios? Some schools say yes, other places say no. There's the ability to install either a virtual web server in the classroom, or off an instructor station or a student station, install XAMPP, which is a ready-made based web server application, basically, that students can upload their sites, their projects to, and at least see them in-house. Or we can set up a domain ourselves through, there's different providers that will provide hosting services for free. And some of them are actually, good sites. They don't always have to have advertising. Some of them are restricted on the types of, scripts or database support or size of files that are out there. But freewebhost.com is a way of checking to see what sort of resources are available.
That's right. And I think that, and if you can't do free web hosts, I'm a big fan of just creating your own intranet and use pretending that it's the internet. You can set up anything and everything, from email servers to web servers to everything, even chat if you really want to get down and dirty with it. So. Well, look, to conclude, Stephen, I want to thank you for the time that you've spent putting this together, talking about all the tips and traps and tricks and all that fun stuff, putting it together. What would you say are some of the biggest issues that you've been able to overcome, that are the most gratifying issues that you've been able to overcome when it comes to teaching CIW in the classroom?
I think the biggest things that are pretty much what we've mentioned here, James, is understanding that the students need to design the stuff, and they need to get their hands dirty and get the stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very gratifying and seeing how they come through here, showing the examples on screen, and hearing the students say, "Oh my God, I did that before." And you're hearing them click. They're recognizing, they're becoming professionals and understanding what's good and what's wrong with it. Or they're going through a project and they're saying, we really need to clean this area up here, and we need to work on, more information on this particular area. So they're getting the design aspects of it, and learning by doing, learning by the examples. Those are the huge aspects of it.
Because we're really. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I always say there's three things that students get out of this program. Is one, they get a degree or a certificate from the academic institution that says the state certifies, what they're learning. They get an industry certification saying they've gone through the CIW program and they've got the skills that they need to be successful in the workplace, and they've got a portfolio that they can take with them that backs up what those other two pieces of paper do. It shows that they can do the work.
Yeah, see, they can move forward with confidence then. They've moved from being just mere consumers to actually being producers. That's right. That's what we're in it. That's what we're in this for. That's what's so exciting about it. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for all the time you spent putting this together. Lisa, let's see, we have a few minutes left for those who might have questions, various things for Stephen about teaching CIW and standards-based web design in the classroom. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Once again, the PDF will be made available to anybody who's registered.
Yeah, hi James, I'm back. We don't really have any questions in our questions panel in the online GoToMeeting webinar tool. David Weil did offer a comment very early on that about you were talking about the different ways in which to deliver training. He was pointing out that yes, Home Learning College in the UK is actively offering the foundations and web designer courses as distance learning courses with tutor support. So yes, there are a variety of schools out there that are offering in a variety of different formats, and that seems to be very successful for them.
See, that's the great thing about it is that because we mix together various learning modalities, fancy way of saying we have books, we have the flash exercises, very hands-on exercises. It's something that works very well in a mentored environment. That we also start with home learning. They recognize we start with the right foundation, no pun intended, but of job task analysis, and that we are tied in with what industry needs there. And so we've done, I think, a very good job of following through with courseware and exams that back all that up. So thanks, man.
Christine's asking some questions about, Christine Kreitzman is asking questions about becoming a CI. I'll send her the URL about that.
Okay, fantastic. Stephen, Stephen, if you could just for a second, we're at the hour now, but talk about, in very basic steps, what does it mean to become a CI? What do you have to do? It's pretty easy.
Well, basically, yeah, it's not a complicated process. Basically, you have to show that you've gone through, the Train the Trainer program, Faculty Institute program. You've taken the certification exam yourself, so you are certified, and then you're providing proof of employment in an academic institution that you are an educator, whether it's a document from the campus that you're working on, or whether it's a state certification, educator certification that you have, basically showing that you are involved in education.
We accept third parties as well, like Microsoft Trainer or CompTIA,
right?
Teacher Plus, Trainer Plus, things like that.
Right, and you are certified at whatever level. You're a certified instructor at whatever level you are certified through CIW. So if you're a certified Web Foundation Associate or a Web Design Specialist,
what we can, at least we'll be sending out CIW CI information. We got it all written down, so you can check it out. So
yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm going to do now is let's turn the time over back to you, and I want to thank everybody for hanging out here, talking to us today about teaching CIW and standards-based web design. Lisa?
I don't have anything additional to add. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending and listening to us. I certainly found the information that James and Stephen were talking about to be very informative, things I was not previously aware of.
Cool.
All right,
Cool.
great.
That's good to hear, man. Well, Stephen, great work as always. Anything else?
No,
Not
James,
right
I
now.
don't think so. All right.
Okay. Well, you everybody
Bye,
take
everybody.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.